Welcome to another peaceful evening with Whispering SandMan stories. Tonight we'll explore the quiet, methodical world of Anne Bonny and Jack Rackham, their careful preparations, their daily routines aboard Caribbean vessels, their gradual transformation from conventional maritime traders to something altogether different. Let the gentle lapping of tropical waters and the steady rhythm of ship life carry you into restful sleep. Welcome to another peaceful evening with Whispering SandMan stories. Tonight we'll explore the quiet, methodical world of Anne Bonny and Jack Rackham, their careful preparations, their daily routines aboard Caribbean vessels, their gradual transformation from conventional maritime traders to something altogether different. Let the gentle lapping of tropical waters and the steady rhythm of ship life carry you into restful sleep.
Water for cooking came from barrels lashed to the ship's deck. Rainwater collected during the previous week's storm, supplemented by fresh water taken on at Nassau's wells. Each barrel bore marks indicating its contents and the date it was filled, information critical to maintaining the crew's health during long voyages. The water had a faint taste of wood and iron, flavours that became unnoticeable after days at sea, a reminder of the careful planning required to sustain life away from land-based sources of supply. Anne's integration into the ship's routine began with the most basic tasks, learning to move about the vessel without interfering with the crew's work, understanding which areas were off limits during certain activities, adapting her body to the constant motion that made every action require additional concentration. The ship's motion was never quite still. Even in calm weather, there was always some movement, a gentle rolling that required conscious adjustment of balance and timing. Her first assignment involved the maintenance of the ship's canvas, sails that required daily inspection and repair, tears from wind and weather that needed immediate attention to prevent larger problems. Anne would examine each sail section by section, running her hands along the fabric to feel for weak spots, identifying areas where the canvas had begun to fray, marking locations that would need reinforcement before the next strong wind put additional stress on the material. The tools required for sail repair were simple but required skillful use. Needles made from bone or metal, thread twisted from hemp fibres, patches cut from spare canvas and carefully shaped to match the damaged areas. Anne would work methodically through each repair, stitching with small, even stitches that distributed stress across the fabric, testing each completed patch by pulling gently on the surrounding material, ensuring that the repair would hold under the tremendous forces generated by wind-filled sails. The daily routine of cleaning and maintenance aboard Rackham's vessel followed schedules that had been refined through generations of seafaring experience. Decks were scrubbed each morning with brushes and salt water, the wooden planks cleaned of accumulated salt and dirt, dried quickly in the Caribbean sun to prevent rot and decay. Ropes were inspected daily for signs of wear, fibres that had begun to separate, areas where constant friction had weakened the hemp, sections that would need to be replaced before they failed under load.
The methodical preparations for sea life The morning Anne Bonny first stepped aboard Jack Rackham's vessel, the air hung heavy with the familiar scents of tar and hemp rope. The wooden deck still damp from the previous night's cleaning, each plank scrubbed with brushes made from bundled twigs. Salt water drawn up in leather buckets and spread evenly across the weathered boards. The ship creaked gently at anchor, a sound that would become as familiar as breathing, the rhythmic groaning of wood and rope adjusting to the subtle movements of tide and current. Rackham's crew moved about their morning duties with the practised efficiency of men long accustomed to shipboard life. Each sailor had his assigned responsibilities, tasks that began before dawn and continued in careful sequence throughout the day. The ship's cook would emerge first from the galley, lighting the fire in the brick-lined cooking box, selecting dried wood from the supply kept in canvas bags to protect it from salt spray, arranging the kindling with the same attention to airflow that Anne had once applied to her kitchen hearth in Charleston. The preparation of the ship's breakfast followed patterns established through years of maritime tradition. Hardtack biscuits, stored in wooden barrels sealed with tar to keep out moisture and vermin, would be removed in carefully counted portions, each piece examined for signs of weevils or rot. The acceptable ones sorted into wooden bowls that had been carved from single pieces of oak. Salt pork, preserved in brine that left white crystals on the meat's surface, would be sliced with sharp knives kept honed on whetstones. The thin strips arranged in iron pans that had been seasoned with repeated use over open flames. The gradual education in maritime commerce. Jack Rackham's approach to Caribbean trade operated within the complex web of colonial politics and international law that governed commerce in the West Indies. Each port they visited had its own regulations and customs, documents that needed to be prepared and presented, fees that had to be calculated and paid, relationships with local officials that required careful cultivation and maintenance. Anne observed these processes with the attention of someone learning a new profession, noting which procedures were truly necessary and which were merely traditional, understanding how successful merchants navigated the bureaucratic requirements of international trade. The cargo they carried reflected the diverse demands of Caribbean island economies. Manufactured goods from European ports that could not be produced locally, raw materials from one island that were needed on another, luxury items that commanded high prices among colonial officials and wealthy planters. Each item had to be properly documented, its origin verified, its destination recorded, its value assessed for customs purposes. Anne learned to maintain these records with the same careful attention she had once applied to household accounts. Every transaction noted, every expense tracked, every profit calculated. The process of loading and unloading cargo followed procedures designed to maximize efficiency while minimizing damage to valuable goods. Heavy items were positioned low in the ship's hold to maintain stability. Fragile cargo was wrapped in canvas and secured with rope. Liquids were stored in specially designed compartments that could contain spills.
Anne participated in these operations, learning to estimate weight and volume, understanding how different types of cargo needed different handling, developing the physical strength required for maritime labour. Navigation between Caribbean islands required knowledge that combined practical seamanship with detailed understanding of local conditions. Wind patterns changed with the seasons, currents that helped or hindered progress, reefs and shallows that could destroy an unwary vessel, safe harbours that provided shelter during storms. Rackham possessed charts that showed these features, hand-drawn maps that had been created and refined by generations of sailors, annotations in various hands recording discoveries and warnings, depths marked in different units that reflected the mixed heritage of Caribbean navigation.
The ship's compass was housed in a wooden box lined with brass, its needle magnetized by careful rubbing with lodestone, protected from metal objects that could affect its accuracy, consulted constantly to maintain course between distant islands. Anne learned to read the compass, to understand how magnetic variation affected its readings in different locations, to recognize when external influences might be causing false readings, to use backup methods of navigation when weather obscured celestial references. Weather prediction became a critical skill that combined observation of natural signs with understanding of seasonal patterns. Cloud formations that indicated approaching storms, changes in wind direction that preceded weather systems, alterations in wave patterns that suggested distant disturbances, variations in air pressure that experienced sailors could feel in their joints and bones. Anne learned to recognize these signs, to prepare the ship for rough weather, to secure cargo and equipment before storms arrived, to find safe harbour when conditions became too dangerous for open water sailing. The maintenance of good relationships with port officials throughout the Caribbean required diplomatic skills that went far beyond simple commercial transactions. Each colonial administrator had his own priorities and concerns. Some focused on collecting maximum customs revenues, others more interested in preventing smuggling and piracy. Still others primarily concerned with maintaining good relations with their European superiors. Rackham had developed expertise in reading these different personalities, adjusting his approach to match local expectations, providing the right combination of respect, profit, and discretion to ensure continued welcome in various ports. Trade negotiations in Caribbean markets involved complex calculations of supply and demand, understanding which goods were scarce at particular times a year, knowing which items commanded premium prices in specific locations, recognizing when to hold cargo for better prices and when to sell immediately. Anne observed these negotiations, learning to read the subtle signals that indicated genuine interest versus mere curiosity, understanding how to present goods in ways that emphasize their value, developing the judgment required to assess the reliability of potential trading partners. The daily rhythms of pirate life. The transformation from legitimate merchant vessel to pirate ship occurred gradually, through small adjustments in routine and procedure, changes that individually seemed insignificant, but collectively represented a fundamental shift in the nature of their enterprise. The crew's morning activities remained essentially the same. Sails still needed maintenance, decks still required cleaning, navigation still demanded constant attention. But the purpose behind these activities had changed from lawful commerce to something that existed in the grey areas between legal and illegal. The selection of targets for pirate attacks required careful observation and assessment. Ships that appeared wealthy enough to carry valuable cargo, but not so well armed as to present excessive danger. Vessels that travelled routes where assistance was unlikely to arrive quickly. Crews that seemed small or inexperienced to surrender without prolonged fighting. These assessments were made through patient observation, studying ship movements through telescopes, noting details of armament and crew size, gathering information from port conversations and tavern gossip. Preparation for pirate attacks followed procedures that emphasized speed and intimidation over prolonged combat. Weapons were cleaned and sharpened, cutlasses honed to razor edges, pistols loaded with carefully measured charges of powder, boarding axes positioned for quick access during action. The ship's black flag was prepared, its skull and crossbones design intended to strike fear into merchant crews, sometimes sufficient to encourage surrender without any actual fighting. Anne participated in these preparations, learning to load and fire pistols, practicing with cutlass and dagger, developing the skills that pirate life demanded. The actual process of attacking merchant vessels involved careful coordination between crew members, each person having specific responsibilities that had been practiced and rehearsed, timing that had to be precise to ensure success with minimum casualties. The pirate ship would approach its target under false colours, flying flags that suggested legitimate merchant status, maintaining the deception until close enough for boarding action. Only at the last moment would the black flag be raised, the crew's intentions revealed, the demand for surrender issued.
Most merchant crews, when faced with determined pirates, chose surrender over resistance, recognising that their employer's cargo was not worth risking their lives, understanding that pirates who met no resistance were more likely to treat prisoners well. The transfer of valuable goods from captured ships to the pirate vessel followed established procedures. The most portable items selected first, cargo that could be easily sold in pirate-friendly ports given priority, items that required special handling saved for later attention. Anne's role in these operations evolved from observer to active participant, her intelligence and practical skills making her valuable for more than just sail maintenance. Her ability to assess the value of captured goods, her skill in questioning prisoners about other potentially profitable targets, her knowledge of maritime procedures that helped identify which ships might carry the most valuable cargo. She learned to recognise the signs that indicated a merchant vessel's true wealth, subtle details of construction and maintenance that revealed the owner's prosperity, crew behaviour that suggested the presence of particularly valuable cargo. The distribution of captured wealth followed traditional pirate customs.
shares allocated according to rank and contribution, the captain receiving multiple shares, ordinary crew members receiving single shares, specialists and officers receiving intermediate amounts. Anne's share reflected her growing importance to the crew's success, compensation that far exceeded what she could have earned through legitimate employment, resources that provided genuine independence for perhaps the first time in her life. The ship's articles, the written agreement that governed crew behaviour and profit sharing, specified punishments for various offences, procedures for resolving disputes, methods for replacing crew members who were killed or chose to leave. Anne studied these documents, understanding the legal framework that pirates used to maintain order, recognising how these informal courts provided justice in situations where traditional law had no authority, learning to navigate the complex politics of pirate democracy.
The mechanics of Caribbean piracy. The network of contacts that supported pirate operations throughout the Caribbean operated through carefully maintained relationships with suppliers, informants, and corrupt officials who found piracy profitable despite its illegality. Tavern keepers provided information about wealthy ships and their schedules. Ship chandlers sold supplies without asking too many questions about their customers' intentions. Port officials accepted bribes to overlook suspicious cargo or irregular documentation. These relationships required constant attention, payments made on schedule, favours exchanged, loyalty maintained through mutual benefit rather than legal obligation. Safe harbours for pirate vessels were found in remote locations where colonial authority was weak or non-existent. Hidden bays that provided shelter from both storms and naval patrols. Islands with fresh water and timber for ship repairs. Locations where careening could be accomplished without fear of discovery. These havens were jealously guarded secrets, their locations shared only with trusted associates, their security maintained through careful observation and discreet elimination of potential threats. The process of careening, cleaning and repairing a ship's hull below the waterline, required specialised knowledge and equipment that limited where such work could be accomplished. The ship would be pulled onto a beach at high tide, allowed to settle on its side as the water receded, exposing the underwater portions for scrating and maintenance. Marine growth that accumulated during months at sea, barnacles and seaweed that slowed the ship's progress, wood-boring worms that could destroy hull planking, all had to be removed through patient manual labour. Repairs to damaged hulls required skills that combined carpentry with understanding of naval architecture, replacing planks without compromising the ship's structural integrity, caulking seams with oakum and tar to prevent leaking, reshaping timbers that had been damaged by combat or weather. Anne observed these procedures, learning to identify different types of hull damage, understanding which problems required immediate attention and which could be temporarily patched, developing appreciation for the complex engineering that kept wooden ships afloat in hostile environments. The recruitment of new crew members involved careful evaluation of candidates' skills and reliability, pirates needed sailors who could handle a ship in all weather conditions, fighters who would stand firm in combat, craftsmen who could maintain weapons and equipment, individuals who could be trusted with valuable information and cargo. Potential recruits were often found among the crews of captured merchant vessels, men who had grown tired of low wages and harsh treatment, sailors who saw piracy as an opportunity for better compensation and more democratic treatment. Intelligence gathering about potential targets required systematic collection and analysis of information from multiple sources. Ship movements tracked through port records, cargo manifests studied for valuable items, crew sizes estimated through tavern conversations, sailing schedules determined through careful observation. This information was compiled and evaluated, patterns identified, opportunities assessed for risk and potential reward, decisions made about which targets offered the best prospects for profitable action. The maintenance of weapons and equipment aboard a pirate vessel required constant attention and specialised knowledge. Gunpowder kept dry in sealed containers, metal weapons protected from salt corrosion through regular cleaning and oiling, wooden handles and stocks treated with preservatives to prevent rot, cutting edges maintained through regular sharpening and proper use. Anne learned these maintenance procedures, understanding how environmental conditions affected different materials, developing the skills needed to keep equipment functional in challenging maritime conditions. Communication between pirate vessels and their shore-based contacts used coded messages and predetermined signals, arrangements that allowed coordination of activities without revealing sensitive information to interceptors, systems that had been developed through trial and error, refined through experience with colonial security measures, adapted to take advantage of the complex political situation in the Caribbean where multiple European powers competed for control.
The intricate politics of pirate havens. Nassau, during the early 18th century, represented a unique experiment in self-governance. A community where pirates, privateers, and other maritime adventurers had created their own society outside the direct control of any European power. The town's physical layout reflected this unusual status. Buildings constructed according to practical necessity rather than official planning. Streets that followed natural contours rather than formal grid patterns. Establishments that catered to the specific needs of seafaring populations rather than conventional colonial society. The Republic of Pirates, as Nassau's pirate community called itself, operated according to democratic principles that were remarkably advanced for their time. Decisions made by majority vote, leadership positions filled through election rather than appointment, disputes resolved through jury trials rather than arbitrary authority. Anne observed these political processes, learning how consensus could be achieved among strong-willed individuals, understanding how democracy could function without formal legal structures, recognizing the advantages and limitations of self-governance. Trade relationships between Nassau's pirate community and legitimate merchants throughout the Caribbean required careful negotiation and discreet management. Captured goods needed to be converted into usable currency. Supplies had to be obtained for ship maintenance and crew provisioning. Information had to be gathered about potential targets and naval patrols. These commercial arrangements operated in legal grey areas, technically illegal, but tolerated by colonial officials who found them profitable, protected by the complex jurisdictional disputes between competing European powers. The fortification of Nassau harbour involved engineering projects that demonstrated the pirates' understanding of military architecture and coastal defence. Gun batteries positioned to control the harbour entrance. Observation posts established on high ground to provide early warning of approaching naval forces. Supply depots created to sustain the community during sieges or blockades. Anne participated in these construction projects, learning to handle heavy materials, understanding how defensive positions were designed and built, developing appreciation for the strategic thinking required to protect a maritime community. Social relationships within Nassau's pirate community reflected the diverse backgrounds and cultures of its inhabitants. Former sailors from various European navies, escaped slaves who had found freedom in piracy, colonial settlers who had turned to maritime raiding, indigenous peoples who had allied themselves with pirate crews. These different groups maintained their own customs and languages while participating in the common enterprise of Caribbean piracy, creating a multicultural society that was unusual for its time. The economic system that developed in Nassau operated largely on barter and credit rather than conventional currency. Captured goods traded for services and supplies. Debts recorded in informal ledgers maintained by tavern keepers and merchants. Value determined by negotiation and mutual agreement rather than official price controls. Anne learned to navigate this alternative economy, understanding how to assess the relative value of different commodities, developing skills in negotiation and trade, building relationships that provided access to necessary goods and services. Educational opportunities in Nassau were limited, but focused on practical skills that were valuable for maritime life. Navigation techniques taught by experienced shipmasters. Weapon maintenance demonstrated by former military specialists. Ship repair methods passed down through apprenticeship relationships. Languages learned through daily interaction with speakers from various nations. Anne took advantage of these learning opportunities, expanding her knowledge beyond the domestic skills she had acquired in Charleston, developing expertise that increased her value to pirate crews and enhanced her prospects for independence. The legal system that governed Nassau combined elements of traditional maritime law with innovations developed specifically for pirate communities. Articles that specified crew rights and responsibilities. Courts that heard disputes between different crews. Procedures for resolving conflicts over captured prizes. Methods for punishing violations of community standards. These legal arrangements provided order and predictability, despite the absence of formal governmental authority, demonstrating how law could emerge from practical necessity rather than imposed authority. The methodical pursuit of maritime independence. The accumulation of wealth through pirate activities required careful financial management and strategic planning that went far beyond the simple acquisition of captured treasure. Resources had to be invested in ways that provided long-term security. Relationships had to be maintained with suppliers and contacts. Future opportunities had to be assessed and prepared for through systematic intelligence gathering and resource allocation. Anne learned to think beyond immediate profits, understanding how successful pirates built sustainable enterprises rather than simply raiding randomly for quick gains. Investment opportunities available to successful pirates included shares in legitimate merchant ventures, property purchases in colonies where questions about wealth sources were not asked too carefully, loans to other merchant entrepreneurs who needed capital for ship purchases or cargo acquisition, partnerships with craftsmen and suppliers who could provide ongoing services to the pirate community. These investments required judgment and careful evaluation, distinguishing between genuine opportunities and schemes designed to separate pirates from their wealth. The establishment of secure bases of operation involved more than simply finding safe harbours. Permanent facilities needed to be constructed for ship maintenance and supply storage. Relationships had to be developed with local populations who could provide services and information. Defensive arrangements had to be made to protect against naval attacks and rival pirate groups. Communication systems had to be established to coordinate activities across multiple locations. Anne's growing expertise in ship operations and maritime commerce made her increasingly valuable as more than just a crew member. Her knowledge of Caribbean trade routes and market conditions, her ability to assess the potential value of captured cargoes, her skill in negotiating with merchants and officials, her understanding of the political complexities that affected pirate operations throughout the region. This expertise provided leverage for demanding greater shares of captured wealth and more influence over crew decisions. The development of her own network of contacts and informants required patient relationship building and careful management of competing loyalties. Tavern keepers who could provide information about ship movements. Corrupt officials who could warn of planned naval patrols. Merchants who could convert captured goods into more portable forms of wealth. Craftsmen who could provide specialized services without asking uncomfortable questions about their customers' activities. Planning for eventual retirement from active piracy became increasingly important as the risks of the profession became more apparent. Colonial governments were strengthening their naval forces. Competition between pirate crews was intensifying. The most profitable trade routes were becoming more heavily patrolled. The political climate in the Caribbean was shifting in ways that made piracy more dangerous and less profitable than it had been in previous decades. The acquisition of legitimate maritime skills and credentials provided options for transitioning away from piracy when circumstances made such a change necessary. Navigation knowledge that could be applied to merchant service. Ship handling experience that was valuable to legitimate captains. Understanding of Caribbean commerce that could be used in legal trading ventures. relationships with merchants and officials that could facilitate entry into conventional business activities. Alternative career paths available to experienced female pirates were limited but not non-existent. Some found positions as tavern keepers or boarding house operators in ports that welcomed maritime populations. Others invested their pirate wealth in small trading ventures or craft businesses. A few managed to marry into respectable colonial society after carefully concealing their past activities. The most successful established themselves as independent merchants with their own ships and crews.
The gradual transformation of maritime relationships. The partnership between Anne Bonny and Jack Rackham evolved from a straightforward business arrangement into something more complex and personally significant. Their shared experiences in dangerous situations, creating bonds that went beyond simple professional cooperation. Their mutual respect for each other's skills and judgment developing into deeper emotional connection. Their common interest in maritime independence providing foundation for long-term planning and commitment. Daily life aboard Rackham's ship created opportunities for intimate conversation and shared decision-making that were rare in conventional relationships of the time. The isolated environment of sea voyages, the need for constant cooperation in dangerous situations, the democratic traditions of pirate crews that encouraged open discussion and shared authority, the absence of traditional social constraints that normally governed interactions between men and women in colonial society, the challenges of maintaining both professional effectiveness and personal relationship required careful navigation of crew dynamics and maritime traditions. Other crew members' reactions to the developing partnership, potential jealousy or resentment that could undermine ship discipline, the need to maintain respect for both Anne's and Jack's authority, the importance of ensuring that personal considerations did not compromise operational effectiveness or crew safety. Combat situations tested the partnership in ways that revealed character and commitment, facing danger together during pirate attacks, depending on each other's skills and judgment in life-threatening circumstances, sharing responsibility for crew welfare and mission success, supporting each other through the stress and uncertainty of illegal activity in a hostile environment, learning to function as a coordinated team under extreme pressure. The accumulation of shared wealth created practical considerations about financial planning and resource management, decisions about how to invest pirate profits for long-term security, discussions about eventual retirement from active piracy, planning for possible separation or capture by naval forces, arrangements for ensuring that accumulated wealth would be preserved regardless of personal circumstances, negotiations about individual versus joint ownership of various assets and investments, social interactions within the broader pirate community required careful management of the partnership's public presentation, maintaining credibility with other pirate captains and crews, demonstrating that personal relationships did not compromise professional competence, preserving the respect necessary for successful leadership in a traditionally male-dominated environment, balancing the desire for privacy with the practical need for community acceptance and support. Future planning discussions revealed shared goals and values that strengthened the partnership's foundation. Common interest in achieving genuine independence from conventional colonial society. Mutual commitment to maintaining maritime careers rather than returning to land-based occupations. Shared appreciation for democratic governance and egalitarian social arrangements. Agreement about the importance of financial security and strategic planning for uncertain futures. The development of their own distinctive approach to pirate operations reflected the combination of Anne's practical intelligence and Jack's maritime experience. More careful target selection based on thorough intelligence gathering. Emphasis on minimizing violence through effective intimidation and negotiation. Attention to maintaining good relationships with suppliers and contacts. Focus on building sustainable wealth rather than pursuing maximum short-term profits. Commitment to treating crew members and prisoners with unusual fairness and respect. And so we find Anne Bonny and Jack Rackham in their element. The endless blue waters of the Caribbean stretching to every horizon. Their ship moving steadily through gentle swells under the steady pressure of trade winds. Sails filled with the breath of tropical air, rigging creaking softly with the rhythm of the sea, the hull cutting smoothly through water that sparkles with reflected sunlight. The daily routines of maritime life continue with their methodical precision. Morning watch calling out the time and weather conditions. Crew members moving about their assigned tasks with practiced efficiency. The ship's cook preparing meals over his carefully tended fire. Sails adjusted constantly to take advantage of shifting wind directions. The steady progress measured by careful observation of sun and stars. Their partnership has found its natural rhythm. Professional cooperation flowing seamlessly into personal intimacy. Shared responsibilities creating bonds stronger than marriage or blood. Common purpose providing direction for their combined ambitions. Mutual respect enabling them to function as equal partners in an enterprise that demands both individual competence and perfect coordination. The Caribbean waters that carry them hold countless other vessels pursuing their various purposes. Merchant ships laden with goods from distant ports. Naval patrol vessels maintaining colonial authority over rebellious waters. Fishing boats working the rich waters near tropical islands. All connected by the same currents and winds. All subject to the same natural forces that govern maritime life. The future spreads before them like the endless ocean. Opportunities and dangers balanced in delicate equilibrium. Success dependent on careful planning and skillful execution. Survival requiring constant attention to wind and weather. Natural hazards and human enemies. The complex political forces that shape Caribbean colonial society. The economic pressures that drive both legal and illegal maritime enterprise. Let the gentle sounds of their ship accompany you now towards sleep. The soft splash of waves against the hull. The whisper of wind through canvas. The quiet conversations of night watches maintaining their careful vigil. The steady creaking of wood and rope adjusting to the endless motion of the sea. The peaceful rhythm of a vessel making good progress through calm tropical waters.
Rest now in the knowledge that even the most adventurous lives follow daily patterns of routine and responsibility. Careful attention to practical necessities, methodical preparation for uncertain futures, patient work towards long-term goals, the quiet satisfaction of competent seamanship, the deep peace that comes from finding one's proper place in the natural order of sea and sky. Sleep well, sleep peacefully, sleep deeply, with dreams of favourable winds and safe harbours, distant islands appearing on clear horizons, the gentle motion of ships that carry dreamers towards unknown adventures, until we meet again for another quiet evening of whispering SandMan stories. Let the endless patience of the ocean carry you gently towards the peaceful shores asleep.